Okay, just want to ask Lily to give us the share screen of the PowerPoint. Yeah, I trust that all of you have a note, which is I sent to you yesterday. I think yesterday Grace has sent it to all of you. If you didn't receive it, you can ask Grace to for the copy, right? So a note that you have as a main guide, so that you can do some note as you go along and follow the lesson. All right, so right now we are in session 2, and we only covered Genesis chapter 1 last week, and today we're going to cover Genesis chapter 2, and then next week we're going to cover Genesis chapter 3, right? So that is what we are going to cover that. But Genesis chapter 2, that's where we are. I just want you to close your eyes. I want you to imagine when you read Genesis chapter 1. So where are you standing right now? When you read Genesis chapter 2, and where are you standing? So just imagine where you are right now. It's Genesis chapter 1 and also in Genesis chapter 2. In Genesis chapter 1, you may feel that you are just hovering above the earth. You are looking down. You are looking at how God began to form his universe, and then how God also filled the earth. When you come to Genesis chapter 2, then you begin to feel that you are standing on the ground. You're standing on the earth. You are looking around. Right, so that is a feel that how you feel like when you read Genesis chapter 1, you are above the ground. And then right now that we come to Genesis chapter 2, that where you are standing on the ground, you are looking around. Right, so the next slide will show you that there is a difference between Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2. In Genesis chapter 1, in Genesis chapter 2, there is a shift in style. There is also a shift in content and also in viewpoint. Genesis chapter 1, God is at the center. The account of creation is given from God's point of view, especially in Genesis chapter 1. God tells us how this whole universe came into being. In Genesis chapter 2, it gives us the view that man is given the point in the center role. In Genesis chapter 1, human race was simply referred as male and female. But in Genesis chapter 2, they have a name. So they were given a name, Adam and Eve. You were told that they have a name. They're no longer known as male and female, but Adam and Eve. In Genesis chapter 1, you will show that it tells us there is God, Elohim, plural word, right? Elohim. There's no name. But in Genesis chapter 2, and that was revealed to us God's name. It's called the Lord God in English version. Lord in the capital letter, it referring to the because in Hebrew or in Jews don't pronounce God's name. Jeremiah in fact spoke correctly and warned the people the day that when he sent to exile, when the day that when Jerusalem was being torn by Babylonian, that day onward, no one will be able to read to pronounce God's name. And God and that subsequently generation onward, no one mentioned God's name. So they use Adonai instead of Yahweh. All right, so in your notes you have seen there's some error. Instead of J, you cancel it, put Y. YHVH. YHVH. Right, so Yod He Va He. That's pronounced as Yahweh because they don't have consonants, they don't have vowel. It just has the consonants, but you put on the vowel, it's pronounced as Yahweh or Yahweh. But actually they don't have W, right? So instead of the English word, you put W in, but there's no W. Why YHVH. That is how the Jews pronounce God's name. Right? God's is the title. Name Yahweh. Right? So like how you call me Pastor Gary. Pastor is my title. Pastor is not my name, but my name is Gary Chen. Right? So that's why I call Lord God Yahweh God. Right? So in Genesis chapter 1, you begin to see that there is male and female made in his image, made in God's image. In Genesis chapter 2, you begin to see that there's a relationship between God and man. There's not a far distance, but there's a relationship between both. And God interacting with man in a way which is unique among all the creatures he had made. Right, so that's how you can see the difference between Genesis chapter 1 and 2. And how man was so unique. Because we know that animals do not have ability to have a spiritual relationship with God as humans do. Right? So humans are like the creator in a unique way because they had the ability to relate with his creator. That's what made man unique. And so there's a difference between man, God and man. Man is made in God's image, and he is also unlike him. He is like us means that our relationship with him, with God, can be intimate. But he is unlike us, and that will also keep us that in a relationship, in the sense that in the sense of reverence. Right. So
Okay.
I have never chose to sing a song
But that's all.
when
How
you
to
mention Jesus as brother, because there is a sense of reverence and we need to have the balance. So in somehow that we need to strike the balance between the too familiar with God or too overall with him. We need to strike the balance. I think the Gospel of Matthew does a very good job. The way that he portrays God as the king of the universe, a kingdom of heaven, the king. Yes, he set us apart and he is the king, but at the same time that he is our father. So that's why it strike the balance, that the relationship between that you treat God as a king, but yet he also as our father. Right? So we need to strike this balance. And next thing, we come with names. Names are important. God gave man name and named him Adam. Adam means, the meaning of Adam is dust, the earth, right? Soil. The woman also was given a name. The name is called Eve, meaning lively. And then, of course, we will mention, Bible give us the name of God, the Lord Adonai, especially spelled with Yahweh, right? So it was normal for names to be descriptive. When Adam names the animal, he uses description, which then become their name. Names in the Bible are not only descriptive, but they also carry the certain authority in them. A person who gives name has authority whoever receives the name. For example, I name my own children. I have my authority over them. That's why I give them name. And sometimes in school, when I was a student, and I know that even today they also practice that, we like to give our teachers a nickname because we want to have a sense of control, right? So it's a very usual way. It's a common way how you want to have a sense of control or authority over them, and we give them name. We name our pet animal because we have authority over them. So when Adam names all the animals, signifying his authority over them, he also named his wife. And such practice still being used today, right? Still practiced today when the woman, wife, takes on the husband's surname. I remember 21st April 2007 when we have our exchange, and my wife, myself, we exchanged a ring, say our vow, and then my pastors will pronounce us Mr. and Mrs. Chen. So now my wife carry my surname, right? So where does it come from? All the way back to Genesis chapter 2, when Adam names Eve. So names appear in Genesis 2. Appear also, the land is also no longer called a dry land. The land also given a name, the name of Cush, the name of Asher, and also Garden of Eden. Eden means delight, the Garden of Delight. Right, so the water also have name, no longer called a great river, but called, there are 4 rivers was mentioned in the Bible. 2 of them are still here today. Tigris and Euphrates are still known today. So if you do some plotting of the land, mention where the Garden of Eden most likely is. Some say there's somewhere maybe at Kuwait, but if you plot it properly, maybe somewhere at near northeastern of Turkey, somewhere up north. We do not exactly know the location, but we can estimate where it can be if you follow the description where the Bible named the river and the land and possibility where the Garden of Eden is. And then next thing we talk about relationship. If we in Genesis 2, we begin to see that there is a relationship involved. We see man at the center of the network of relationship. This defines the meaning of life. Our relationship is important. We are created as a relational being. Relationship has 3 dimensions. One is below us, we seduce. One is above us, we submit. One is alongside us, that's where we support. Vertical relationship to a nature below, vertical relationship to God above, horizontal relationship with another person, and also with ourselves. Right, so these are the 3 dimensions of relationship that we have today. So the first dimension of relationship, our relationship to nature, relationship we have to the creatures God has made. This relationship is one of the animals were given to us. So we seduce, we control. They give to serve mankind. This does not mean we have a license to be cruel or to make them extinct. It does mean that animals are further down the scale of value than human beings. Value of human life is more important if we compare with animals. Right, for something that we need to be very, keep this in mind. Somehow that we see more value seems to be placed on the protection of certain and dangerous animals, and yet at the same time we kill our baby, we abort our visitors. Right, so it doesn't make sense that we want to protect certain species of animals, but at the same time we kill our own kind. Right, so which are the more important, the animals or human life, which is important? And in fact, Jesus also willing to sacrifice 2,000 pigs, the legions, 2,000 pigs in order to save one man's sanity, to restore him back to his family. And that's how we can strike this balance. Genesis chapter 9, verse 3, right after the flood, we were told that animals were given to provide food for mankind, a certain animal that we can consume. So in relation to nature below us, we are to have dominion. We are to cultivate it, to control it. But please note that human beings need an environment. And that is both. We need something that is practical and useful, and yet at the same time something that is beauty to our eyes. Right, so it's very natural things that God has placed us. That's why God placed man in the garden, not in the wilderness. Right, you can see the difference. If you go to the places that there is let the nature grow their vegetations and tree, it's very different. And we plant our own garden. We take care of the garden. We bonsai our tree, how we want our tree to grow. The trees that they grow. That's why you look at the trees in our city, they are all like bonsai. We cut the way that how they want them to grow. But you go to the wild or in the wilderness, the trees are very different. They are much more uglier kind of things. Right? So God placed us in the garden. God placed man in the garden. There's a beauty for us to enjoy, but yet also there's a functional. So we need both. Right? So if we renovate our house, we move into a house can be functional, but also we want a certain way of how we decor our house, the beauty to live in. Right? So that's how we need to these two things are always gone alongside with us. So God did not put man, so it's the same, God did not put man in the wilderness, but God put man in the garden. Right? So that is the first dimension. Second dimension of relationship, our relationship to God. The nature of this relationship is partly seen in God's command to man concerning two trees in the Garden of Eden. The trees of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of life. The tree that is the one tree, one make life longer, and one make life shorter. So I want you to keep this in mind. Please note that these two trees, they are not magical tree. It is not a magic that they live. They take this fruit so that they, it is not that the kind of magical tree. Someone called this tree called sacramental trees, right? So very often God appoint physical channel to communicate spiritual blessing or curse to us. For example, in the Old Testament, Leviticus, certain utensil being used, certain item being used, whether they're being seen as unclean or clean or holy, a secret, right? So they had to differentiate between these three dimensions, three layers, three level. Something that is unclean, we cannot use it to as a worship object for God, item that use it for as a worship. Something that is commonly used but is clean, and something that is set it apart, and we call it holy or secret, right? So or we consecrate it, right? But it is not a magic, but it's something that is we set it apart for the purpose and to use it as a tool to worship. So sacramental in the New Testament, likewise, is like we eat bread and wine at the communion, or called the Lord's Supper, is for our blessing. But eating bread and drinking wine incorrectly with the wrong attitude, it makes more harms than good. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, that's where Paul told the people that why they are falling sick and dying, and because the people are consuming with a wrong attitude. That's why the teaching need to become in place before we in the Anglican Church. Our practices that we confirm the people. We go through the teaching to discipline them so that they know what they are doing and come with the right attitude, and with the confirmations, and they'll give them a so-called license, but it is not the biblical kind of license. But at least that they know, we comfortably and trust that they already know what's the right attitude when we come to the Lord's table, right? So it's not magical, but yet it is a sacramental. It's set it apart for God's purpose to use. So the tree of life tells us that Adam and Eve were not by nature immortal. That is so something that does show it. They would have lived forever only by having access to the tree of life. In fact, to today, those scientists have yet discovered why we die. There may be many causes of death, accidents, we get ourselves harmed, or certain disease that we have. But in natural, we will not, we won't die if we have a proper food and air, exercise. Our body will replenish, in the sense that, even our largest organ in our body which is our skin, and our skin replaced in every other few years. So naturally that they don't see the reason our body will die, our body can able to live on, right? But no one know why there's a clot inside us start to wind down. That is where the scientists couldn't understand. So our body is capable to renew itself, but science does not know why the day when we were born, the clot inside us starts winding down. Our immortality, the secrets of our immortality is the tree of life. God was making it possible for human being to go on living forever. So man was not by default immortal, but was given opportunity to attain immortality by feeding on God's constant supply of life. The tree of knowledge of good and evil. Knowledge is not about information. In fact, the knowledge means about experience, knowing, experience. Knowledge means a personal experience, knowing God, knowing certain experience in your life. For example, our children who grew up in Christian home, they need not just only knowledge, information from their Sunday school, from their youth ministry, but they need to experience who God is in their life. They need to have an encounter with God. For example, if you read the book of Judges, that generation who worship God, but next generation, somehow they don't know their God, right? So because they don't have that experience and knowledge of Him, a personal experience, personal encounter with their God, and that generation lost, and they went through big things, and then God had to rescue them again, and then we see the repeating cycle. Especially we have problem with the next generation. I came from the first generation Christian. I have my personal experience, encounter with God, and I pray also that my children also will have that experience and encounter with Him. Right, so that is knowledge. So God's command to not eat this tree because He did not want them to know or to experience good and evil. He wanted them to retain their innocence. Something that once we do wrong things in our life, we can never be the same as we were, especially in a certain areas, right? So sexual sin is one of them, that if we open up ourselves with that experience, it will never go back to, we can't be innocent anymore, right? So we lost our innocence. We may be forgiven, but we have lost our innocence. So the tree was there because it was God's way of saying that He retained moral authority over them, that they were not to decide for themselves what was right or what was wrong, but to trust God to tell them what is good and evil. Because men have difficulty handle that when they discover what is good and evil. And till today, we struggle with that. We struggle with that because we cannot handle it. So man not only needs to relate to those beneath him and God above him, but also to those alongside him. We are not fully human if we just relate to God and not to other people. We need both God and people. And I also mentioned earlier in this, when we began, shalom, which means peace, it's in English version, but in Hebrew, which means harmony. Right? Harmony, which means shalom, every time we say shalom to each other, it means that harmony with myself, harmony with God, harmony with each other, harmony with nature. That is the meaning of shalom. So in Genesis 2, we have the picture of that harmony. God warns Adam that if he breaks this harmony, he will have to die. Not immediately, but he will have to die. He can't live forever. And this means that his inner clock will begin to wind down. So some say that this penalty is too harsh, too much. Death seems too harsh. Just a little fruit, just a sin. He didn't kill somebody or destroy anything, but he just bite or just eat that fruit, which is what we are told not to. But God was saying that once man experienced evil, he will have to limit the length of his life. If not, evil will become eternal. So let us say that if God allowed rebellious people to live forever, they will destroy his world forever. That's why God had to limit the evil, limit our life. So he put a time limit on those who will not accept his moral authority. Our God is a moral God. It was this immoral that stained not just the earth, but also heaven. When Christ died on the cross, his blood cleanses us. His blood cleansed the earth as well in heaven. Right? So because the angels, the fallen angels, still in heaven. Third dimension, our relationship to each other. Genesis shows us that man needed a suitable companion. Our pet animals cannot replace personal friendship with another human. It's very different, right? So God made Adam and Eve to be Adam's companions. And we are told in Genesis 1 that male and female are equal. They are both on the equal. But in Genesis 3, we begin to see that they are equal was in priorities and somehow is tilted off balance. We will see that in Genesis 3. So in Genesis 2, show us that the function of men and women are different. First, the responsibility of man is to provide and protect. The responsibilities of women to exist and to accept. These are the two different functions, but yet they are equal. Like they are equal. So 3 points to note when you can find them in the Bible, in the New Testament, especially about men and women. Woman is made from man. She derives her being from Adam. Therefore, woman is named by man, just as he names the animals. Number 2, woman is made after man. Man, therefore, carries the responsibility of the firstborn. It's clear in Genesis 3 that Adam is blamed for sin, not Eve, because Adam was responsible for her, because he is like a firstborn son. Number 3, woman is made for man. Notice that Adam had a job before he had a wife, right? Therefore, man is made primarily for his work, and woman is made primarily for relationship. That is how you see a balance. Functions are very different. But that also doesn't mean that man must not have relationship, or woman must not go out to work. Or rather that it is the role or purpose for each of them, that when God made male and female. Man names woman also show that how the partnership is to work, not as a democracy, but with responsibilities of leadership. And also emphasize one thing is a cooperation, not a competition, right? So these things have to be in a correct view. In Genesis chapter 2 also tell us that more important thing, sex is good. Sex is not sin. It's beautiful because God said that it's very good. Sex was created for partnership, not parenthood, right? So the whole purpose of that is a partnership, but not parenthood. 2 verses in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. In the Bible in Hebrew, because Bible written in Hebrew, if you read Hebrew, you can differentiate between a poise and poetry. right? And English version, you can't see the difference. So generally, then God passed the information to us. He will return in the sense that employs much more information. But something come up from the heart, the feeling that you use the poetry, right? So there are both verses are being mentioned, interesting, and it turned from poetry. For example, God became poetic when he considered male and female, when he created in his own image. And then to another verse in chapter 2, verse 23, Adam became poetic when he catch the sight of this beautiful girl when he woke up from his first surgery under anesthetics. Right. So these are the two special verse in Hebrew. It became a poetic. All right. So four things about sex, which we need to put it in the right place. First, it is very good. It is not a dirty word. God made sex. He saw that it was very good. Okay, so it is blasphemy to say that it is dirty. Second, sex was given first for partnership rather than reproduction in the case of our human species. Number three, man is prior to woman. Right? Ahead of woman, but it is not superior. Number three, woman is part of man. That Rib say that man is incomplete without her. He cannot live a self-contained life. He is not truly man unless he thinks rightly of woman. Very sadly, many years ago, I went through training about in counseling, and things are surfacing. Some are struggle with their relationship with his wife. Some men begin to see that their wife is like a set machine rather than as a person that he can relate to, kind of things. So that's why we need to have a correct view of women, right? So it's a very important part of that. Okay? So marriage is made out of two things: living and craving. It involves both physical and also social aspects when union takes place. Sexual intercourse without social recognition is not marriage. Rather, you can justify that it's just a paper, it's just a certificate, we just sign it, doesn't make any difference at all. But most important, it's not about the paper or certificate, but it is about the social recognition, that people know that you are in marriage. Right? So sexual intercourse without social recognition is not marriage, it is fornication. But social recognition without consummation is not a marriage as well. So we need both, right? Social recognition and also we need social recognition and also a full consummation. Bible also tells us that marriage takes precedence over all other relationships, which is marriage is where the husband and wife is the inner circle, right? Children's, grandparents, friends. But important thing is that the core of the relationship is important, right? So a person partners is their first priority before all other relationships, even before their children. For the father, message for the father. Fathers, the greatest gift that you have ever give to your children, it is not toys, it is not clothes, it is not food. It is not the material things that you can provide for them. Yes, it's our responsibility. But the greatest gift that you can give to your children is to love their mother. Right? So that is the greatest gift you can give to your children. So interesting part is that in the Bible, they hardly talk about parenting, but more on the relationship between husband and wife in a marriage. So when you put marriage right, children will be right at home. I want to show you a next picture. Some graph for you to see the two pictures of the marriage. I don't want to call secular view or a biblical view, but I want to call it a world view and the biblical view. World view, of course, that the relationship only husband and wife, that is what you are focused on. But if we look at the biblical view, husband and wife and your union together and also with God. And that's how we work in the marriage life. Right. So next picture I want to show you also. And now you also see that how God's order for family. And Jesus, yes, he is main coverage of the husband, and the husband is coverage for the wife. And that's how you relate in the marriage. All right, so there's tiny words is there, and you can take a screenshot if you want to, and you can I can't really see the screenshot on the screen itself. Okay, but the natural order of family is how you see, especially that we emphasize in Ephesians chapter 5-6, that how the coverage of between husband and wife. Okay, so husband and wife are to put each other as absolute priority, top priority, the most important. They have to protect their marriage, and so their home can be protected. Okay, Genesis chapter 2 show us a couple with nothing to hide with each other. They have nothing to hide, and with no embarrassment, they are total openness to each other. But something went wrong when sin entered into them and into the world, and it begins to see that they begin to hide from each other. They cannot be so open with each other. Right, so that's why we see that many this thing spinal all the way down to generation. Next things that we are looking at is, now we move on from the marriage. Now we are not doing the marriage preparation, marriage course here, but now we move on to next things that we want to question. Most important question that many people ask also: does the prehistoric man fit in Genesis? That is a big question that people often try to understand. Is there such thing as a prehistoric man? Well, what does the Bible say? Or does this figure, or this somehow the science or people have discovered certain bone, it does look like human, but it's not so human? Well, are we able to fit into the Bible? Evolutionary theory has developed the argument that human beings are descendants from apes. Right? How they differentiate apes and monkey? Monkey had tail. Apes have no tail. So that's how you differentiate, right? So geological finds suggest that there are prehistoric men who seems to be related to a modern Homo sapiens. There's remain, especially bone, they have dig out and they found. They claim that human life began in Africa rather than in the Middle East, where the Bible put it. But that was in the past. But today they discover that more evidence show that the origin of human civilization is not started in Africa, but started in the center where the Mesopotamia, the Middle East, is right now, right? So that's where throw the anthropologists into a chaotic when they discover that new finding. More things are being dig out, more things are begin to show more evidence that Bible become more accurate in a sense. So two big questions we need to ask ourselves: how are we to understand the relationship of modern man to prehistoric man? I forgot the word man. Yeah, prehistoric man. Second question: is it possible to reconcile what scriptures and science say about the origin of man? Right, so these are the two big questions. Now we are looking at the origin of man. So before we move on to prehistoric man, they give us a better understanding. Genesis tells us that man is made of the same materials as the animals. Both man and animals made from the dust, the mineral from the earth. Animals were made of the dust of the earth. We too are made from the dust of the earth. We came from the same material, which we can find the crust of the earth. Now, Genesis 2 tells us that God breathed into the dust and man became a living soul. Right, so that is one thing that we need to get it correct. We have body, we have soul, we have spirit. So how they distinguish between soul and spirits, and body, soul, spirits kind of things? what is soul? So, and this part is a lot of misunderstanding, right? So we thought that soul is a spirit, soul, they are interchangeable or things like that. But soul is something that what the Bible describes as a breathing body. When God breathed into man, man became a living soul. And the same description for the animals as well. Animals became a living soul, a living body, a body that breathes, a soul. Right, so in Hebrew, soul means a breathing body. Animal and man are both described as a living soul. They both have the same kind of beings. So we, even in the, let's say we're out in the sea and we are in the dangerous, we send out the distress, we send out SOS, save our soul, save our breathing body. Right, so people ask, how are you able to, where is the soul in the body? That's what people ask. And easy way to say that, can you able to find how you distinguish, can you able to find music in the piano? We know that piano is physical thing, but it can produce sound, produce music, right? So how you able to separate that? So that is what soul means, a living being. In fact, in the day of resurrection, okay, before I come to that, if you read carefully in the Old Testament, body and soul often being mentioned. The concept of spirit only comes in the New Testament. Or life after death, the concept of life after death is only come in the New Testament when Jesus spoke about life after death. Right? So our body will die, will return back to the dust, and our spirit will return back to God. Right? So that's how the description is. But even in the day of resurrection, we need immortal body to house our mortal soul. That's why our body was given as immortal, and we have to inherit the immortality, the same body as Jesus, to house our mortal soul. Right, so that's how it is described back. Right, so in the earlier day, the teaching about soul, so it maybe people describe it as your emotions, your mind, to love the God, you love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. How that's the thing that mind and soul, but soul is where we talk about our living body. Okay, so that is the special of man. Man is special. Mankind are unique for different reason. Man and apes are not in common kind. This thing we need to have. It's very important for us to know the difference. It is direct opposition to the biblical account. If we say that we are come from the common source, we are not at all. Man is special creation. He is made in the image of God, direct from the dust and indirectly from the animals. When God said bara, create, which means to create something completely new, something out of nothing. It's completely new. If you read carefully in Genesis 1, bara was mentioned 3 times. And 3 times was mentioned on when God create a matter, when God create life, when God create man. And you use the word bara. But made, which means you manufacturing, you make something out from something else. But bara was special word was being used mainly for matter, for life, and for man. That implies that man is unique, right? So, and what does science have to say about this, right? So what does science have to say about this whole things? Many people want us to choose to accept one side or the other. You accept science, you don't accept scripture. You accept scripture, you don't accept science. But how we can able to reconcile those two? Either science had made false investigation into prehistoric man, or maybe scripture had give us a false information or record. Scriptures just mainly for moral value. That doesn't really matter whether it is true. Historically, it doesn't matter. So, but as I explained to you last week, we need to learn how to integrate both together and to see the whole balance of that. So there is no doubt that science has discovered remains, body or bones, most of it are bones that does look like us, does look like human being. And they given various names. The next picture. This is an earlier mankind. Caveman is known as caveman, man who is unintelligent. They are creatures that can use tooth to hunt. Yeah. And the next one, some that discover just this piece of bone, I call it a Peking man. And the next one, a Java man, which is closely look like the King Kongs or apes or things like that. So that's as close as they can imagine how it looks like. Some claim that they have found human remains which dates 4 million years ago. Anthropologists point out that human origin is started from Africa. But of course, later they found out most report and most discovery, they found that it may not be Africa, but in the Middle East. So Homo sapiens is to say to go back to 30,000 years. Earlier pictures that I show you, some of them come from as far as 120,000 years ago, or the earlier is about even further at 300,000 years ago. But which is which? Are they human? Are they really human? So what are we saying about all this? Three things. Number one, nothing has yet been found that there is half apes, half human. If we believe that there's evolution take place somewhere in a year that they have some transition, half, that kind of mermaid, half fish, half human, that kind of things. But so far we have not found any of these kind that have half apes, half human, or half human, half apes, half man kind of things. So there's no half, right? Secondly, not all groups are our direct ancestors. Scientists acknowledge that. Not all of them are human beings, right? Anthropology also in a state of chaos because they realize that, yeah, it's true that some of them are not direct from in a line of direct link to human being. Number three, the remains do not follow the progressive order. That is, and then in the charts that we see, in the next slide, you see that, ideally, the baby is come from animals that were not slightly smaller brain, they can walk in upright position, ability to carry tools, and then progressively become where we are able to walk upright, and our brain is much larger, right? So this ideal way of how they see progressive order, assume there is more the assumption. But these charts are not inaccurate, because they begin to discover that early human remains had larger brain than we do today. Some walk upright than some of the latest. They're somewhere along the way that there are others ability to walk upright. So is that only certain group evolved or certain group didn't evolve, kind of thing? So the ideal this chart is the progressively, but in practice, in finding, they are not at all. Some had the bigger brain than the earlier one had the bigger brain than the latest one. So that is one of the issue that they face. So how to explain that? So three possible way of resolving the conflicts here is that, before I come to that, I'll let you decide which one you want to pick. Right. So there are three ways to look at it, and you pick one of that. Number one, prehistoric man was a biblical man. So we are digging up. Maybe it was the same as Adam, made in the image of God. Or some even suggest that, Genesis 1 will portray with paralytic hunting man. In this picture, you see a caveman that carried a tooth and hunt. Right, that is referred to Genesis 1. Genesis chapter 2 portray a Neolithic farming human being. Right, so it gives us the two distincts of the picture of these two kind of mankind. Maybe Adam is not the first man after all. God had created other mankind kind of things, and Adam may be more refined. Yeah, so some suggest that. So prehistoric man was a biblical man. Number two, prehistoric man at some point changed into biblical man. At some point in history, this animal-like man or man-like animal became the image of God. Maybe just one change, too few change, and all of them change at once. Like wherever, right? Some some changes or partial change, or they just change everything suddenly, kind of things, right? The possibility, prehistoric man was not a biblical man. Prehistoric man had a similar physical appearance, ability to carry tools, physical likeness, but not spiritual in a sense that able to connect to God. That this species somehow they extinct along the way, they disappeared. And in fact, they find that whatever bone they found, maybe this prehistoric man, none of them have these common things that what we have today. They doesn't have religion. It doesn't have religion, right? So they don't worship anything at all. If you come to a caveman, they don't have a religion. So he was a very different creature, kind of man-like animal, but not made in the image of God. So there are three possibilities. Maybe there are 4 or 5. I just leave it to you, 3 of them, and I leave it to you which one you want to pick, right? So I leave it to you. So now big question, we go back again. What is man? Man has come from God. The Bible says man has come from God. Even though man is made of the dust of the earth, but it comes from God. Man belongs to a fallen race, not a rising star, not a rising one. Man is quite a different in a way from the other living being, other living things. How intelligent my pet cat, I keep cat at home, my pet is cat. How intelligent my cat can be, my cat and I are completely different creatures. If you had a pet at home, you and your pet are completely different creatures. There are several reasons from the Bible which set man apart from all the animals. Number 1, man is the climate of creation. Science agrees with that. Science agrees that climate and crown peak of creation is man. Number 2, the word creator is used of man and not of the plants and animals. God create life, right? So there's a difference. But God create life, God also create man, right? So 3 times was mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, created, bara was used on matter, life, and man. These are the 3 things. Number 3, before man is created, God talked amongst himself, which he never did before any of the other things. So the divine Trinitarians or Trinity didn't discuss any other part of creation. That set man apart, because when God say God say let us make man in our image. Number 4, God said that let us make man in our own image and after our likeness. That's where we bear the image of God, which is no other part of creation has, not even the animals. I have a relationship with God. My cat doesn't have the relationship with God. My cat don't look up to the sky. We look up to the sky. Right? My cat doesn't pray. No animal prays. So there is no image in them. Therefore, they have no relationship with our creator, but man has relationship with our creator. So that sets us apart, right? So we have religion, we relate to God. Number 5, God spoke to man after creating him. He never spoke to the plants or to the animals, but he spoke to man. Number 6, man was given dominion over everything else, which God gives the plants, God gives the animals to man. And you are boss over them. You are boss over them as God boss over us. God dominion, which means law over them. You are law over them. Number 7, God wrote the pattern of his own work into human nature, not into other part of his creation. The pattern of God's work is 6:1. The ratio is 6:1. 6 day work, 1 day rest. That is his pattern. He pass it on to mankind that God rested on the 7th day. So of all the nature, there is only one part that has 7 days week which built in, which is for human. Not for the nature. Nature have season, years and months, but never be 7-day weeks. But this 7 days week was given to mankind. Even during the day of the French Revolution, they tried to change the whole entire system. They tried to abolish 7 day and to recreate the calendar to put it 8 days week. But over the years, it doesn't work at all. It doesn't work. I also noticed that my cat doesn't need a Sunday or Saturday, or whichever you want it as a day of rest. No other part of nature, even my house plants, needs a Sunday. So, and nature has given season, but not the 7 days week. So man reflect God's work and is related to God. And so from these 7 reasons, man is supernaturally made, and he comes from God. So to answer the question, as I asked earlier, what is man? And you must answer the question, where did he come from? When did man come from? Of course, Ecclesiastes reminds us that with our body, we die, we return back to the earth, dust to us, ash to ash. But it was also saying that the spirit returned to God who gave it. God give us the spirit. All right, so that is the first part of the talk. And the important part is when we are moving into evolution. Something that we shy off, something Christians dare not to confront it, something that our children especially had to face it, because it become more and more way of trying to assert into the highest learning and study or in the university. And these are the things that a lot of our Christians youth or young people find hard to cope with. And we can't shy away with it. We need to look into that. And what does evolution have to say? Most people assume that evolution is Charles Darwin's theory. The fact is it's not at all. If you trace back all the way in the earlier writing, this person, the first person who came up with this idea of evolution was Eric Toaster, all the way back to the earlier century. And he came up with this idea. And then in the modern day, this is Erasmus Darwin, with Charles Darwin's grandfather, who also found it and wrote a book about evolution. That wasn't very popular at that time, in his time, but Charles Darwin, his grandson, was the one who picked it up and then to make it famous. right? So evolution defined as a progressive development in forms of life. That is the whole concept of that. Two big questions we need to ask in regard to evolution. Has there been evolution among the plants and the animals? Second question is, has there been evolution from animals to man? So these are the two big questions we need to face, we need to confront it. Evolution among the plants and animals. Charles Darwin's work exclusively in this field. In the earlier work, in the first part of his work, he is mainly focused on plants and animals. Just a little bit background, a brief background of Charles Darwin. Himself, he was brought up into in a Christian home, Christian parents. Grandfather is not, but parents is. In fact, during his school day, track and field, he prayed that he can be able to complete his race and got first. And prayer answer, and he used it as a testimony and shared with his friends that he got into first in the race because he prayed. Right, so that's as young as he was, he prayed to God. Problem came about is when he younger, when he doing his earlier life as a young adult. His parents, his father was very wealthy, and he discovered that his father were not pass on his inheritance to him. That's where the crisis came. He distanced himself away from his father. He was trying to run away from his own father. So his father decided that he just hanging around doing nothing. So his father decided that wanted him to do something. So get him to enroll into Cambridge to study theology. Right. So in hope that he will pick it up from there. Pick up his life and do something more meaningful. And along the way he dropped out. He doesn't feel that he was called to do called by God to in the ministry. At least he felt that way. But he had developed this interest of studying nature and science. So that's why he began to enroll himself to study biology and natural history. So that's how he began from there. In 1831, he set on a ship to go around the world to study plants and animals. On the islands of South America, he noticed certain species of plants and animals, which he can find in the mainland. So big question he asked, why these plants and animals are in the islands? How they got over the other side? So how did they get there? And in fact, he spent 20 years studying plants and animals, and finally he wrote a book known as The Origin of Species. We relate to plants and animals. That is the first part of his life. Of course, subsequently he began to write another second book, The Origin of Species, on human being, animals to human. Right. So that's where everything went into chaos. So he came to the conclusion that the various species of plants and animals were not independently created, but descended from the other species. That's how he concluded. But before he wrote that book, someone thought that most of them at that time, people thought that God created daisy flower and lilies separately. That's what people thought. And God created pigs and horses and cows distinct from each other. And what he thought in theory, what Charles Darwin thought in theory, that two different kinds of animals could come from the same kind, same original, same sort. And that was a basic idea that he took it, and then no further. But later on, he break even further than that. So this is the earlier part of his life. And this is the idea. It is still a theory. It's not proven yet. It is not proven. It is not proven fact. So we are not having to cope with facts. We are cope with a theory. We are confronted with theory, not a fact. That's why you don't shy away from that, because what they are confronted us with is their theory, but not a fact. So don't scare when people confront you with evolutions, theories, and question you about your Bible, about Bible creation, and things like that. It's just a theory. It's not a fact. Right. So that is what we're coping with. It has a lot of fact behind. It has a lot of fact behind, but it is still a theory. It may have a lot of facts behind that, but it's still a theory. And many theories. In fact, there are many theories, not just one theories, but there are many theories, because other evolutionists, they don't see eye to eyes with Charles Darwin. They came up with their own approach. Let's say if someone said to you, like, Ken Song, what do you think about evolution? And then Ken Song will say, no, do you mean the theory of evolution? And his friend will say, yes. What do you think about the theory of evolution? Then Ken Song will say, there isn't one. Do you mean the theories of evolution? There are many theories. Which theory you are referring to? Because not just only Charles Darwin's theory, but the other theories also. So in this way, we move the battle from our court into theirs, right? So to let them fight their own battle, right? So there are many theories that don't agree each other at all, right? So let them fight their own theories. So don't come to our court, right? So which theory you are referring to? So back to the Bible to put some thoughts. Question is, what does Bible say about plants or even animals? Does it allow such evolution? If we read Genesis chapter 1 carefully, they're interesting. Two things I just want to highlight to you. And the rest I leave it to you to decide how long you want to pick it up from there. First, if you look at Genesis chapter 1, verse 11, God said that let the earth sprout vegetation, plants, yielding seed, fruit, trees on the earth, bearing fruit after their kind with seed in them. And it was so. In verse 12, the earth brought forth vegetation, plants, trees, and rest. Right, so in verse 1 and verse 11. So the Bible does not say that God made them all at that point, but that the earth did. That is an interesting part that we discover that. Question is, how the earth did it? Plants and animals evolve? That is a big question. Next verse I want to show you is verse 24. Let the earth bring forth living creature after their kind, cattle, creeping things, beasts of the earth after their kind, and it was so. And God made the beast. In verse 25, God made the beasts of the earth after their kind. I want to tell you that as you read the Bible carefully, whether in verse 11 and verse 12 and verse 24 and verse 25, you see a repeat pattern. Pattern is that God tells us this is the end product. In verse 11, in that case, I bring out earlier in chapter 1, verse 11 to verse 12. In verse 11 is the end product. And then in verse 12 is where God began, initiate the process. Okay, keep this in mind. We have many plants, many species of plants. Till today, we still haven't identified all of them. We are still discovering a lot, even in Singapore itself, right? Whether in the insects, some other animals we have never seen before, and suddenly, hey, how come there are this kind of animals? So they begin to collect a lot of species and different kind of animals or plants. The Bible says that after their kind, according to your kind, depends on which versions you are reading. Most of us felt that this phrase does imply that God created each one separately. But somehow this phrase may not imply that. God decided before the process began what the end product should be. After their kind is not a phrase that describes the process, but the product, the end product. For example, that, when I, for those who attend the earlier CE, we studied the book of Revelation. We began to see the end of the world and life after the end product. And right now that we go back to Genesis, we come how God initiate the process towards the end product. So that's how we see those two verses. And God tell us that this is the end product, how the end result is going to be like. And the next verse, he tell us that he initiate the process. But God didn't tell us how the process is like. That was silent. All right, so three things here. Number one, Genesis does tell us that God started the process of plants and animals' life. He created life, yes. Number two, that God decides where it should end product. And number three, not a word say about anything in between the process. Right, so that's how a possibility that we can see that if science come up with proof, let's say if science come up with proof, which hasn't yet, that plants and animals evolve into its present stage. But the problem that we have is if science come up with that, so and if we understand the scriptures, I don't think there's a problem that I can still worship God happily because God made them, God made life, God gave life. All right, so but now the problem that we face is that atheists and agnostics, people who not sure there is God or not, they use the theory, not the fact, but theory as the attack on biblical doctrine of creation. Right? They use it to attack the doctrine of creation. And the original idea in relation to the study of plants and animals was taken to apply to men. So it just, Charles Darwin only began with plants and animals, subsequently that he developed to animals and to men, right? So that is a problem. And why they do that? Because it's telling us that if evolution does take place in mankind, this means man did not need God anymore. Man did not need God anymore. If you understand Charles Darwin's life, all his life he had been running away two persons in his life. Firstly, he ran away his own father. He doesn't want to face his father. Secondly, he ran away from God. He has his lovely wife. He married a Christian woman. He has children. His wife taught his children the Lord's Prayer, and that's agonized him. So till the end of his life, he lost the interest of his life. He lost the interest of music, things that he used to like. He just lost all his interest. He just life. This something inside him just died off. There's no interest or anything that enjoy what God has given him. Right. So and all his life that he's run away and trying to prove that man doesn't need God. And a reflection of how he also ran away from his own father. Right, so that's how you read his life and also his theory, and are we able to accept it or not? Because the way how he lived his life. So man was saying, include Charles Darwin also saying that we are evolving, we are on the top and up, we are up and on, and man will going to evolve to be a god very soon. Right, so if we look at what's it called, the mutant X-Men, yeah. So whoever can evolve to a certain stage that you can be a god, you are in control, kind of things. So before I move any further, we have been looking at the question: was there evolution among plants and animals? Two things scientifically, yes, it looks as it might have been, but it is not proven. That is what it might have, but it is not proven. Scripturally, it is possible, and there is nothing in the Bible to deny it. Right? So possibility, but yeah, the Bible doesn't really deny it. So in evolution, there are basic term and certain term was used, we need to understand before I move any further. Terminology, certain terminology was being used, right? Simplify it. The first one, variation, which means believe that there have been a small gradual changes in form, which are passed on to each succession generation. Each generation has slight change to the next generation. The next generation has slight change to the next generation. It will take some time to see the changes, right? So one generation to next generation to next generation will change and evolve along the way. That is called variation. Second is called natural selection. Okay, from these variations, a variation, there will be a natural selection, which means a survivor of the most. With all these changes take place, those whether plants, animals can able to survive in the environment, that is called natural selection. The changes might not all can be able to survive, but those that stronger one will survive in a new environment that suit to the environment. Natural selection is a process whereby these species most adapted to their environment and survive. And so this selection is natural because it happens automatically with selection, with no help or outside, which means God is not in the picture at all. Thirdly, which most of us used to it, this term called mutations. I believe that there, beside all these slow gradual process or selections changes, a Frenchman will say that instead of gradual change but there will be a sudden change. There was a sudden change, a large changes known as mutation. A sudden change in a very short span of time. For example, in the COVID virus, it started more than about a year ago, and now that we are faced with mutation on the mutation, and see how virus evolves so fast, a sudden change in a short span of time. So some say that variation might not possible, or natural selections might not possible. Sorry, it's a typo on the PowerPoint. It's not possible, but mutation may be possibility. A sudden change in a short span of time. Next, microevolution. A concept of this is that they have a limited change within certain animals group or within certain plant species. Horse groups and dog groups remain the same, but they just might change along the way from one succession or generation to next generation, right? So in fact, science proves that there is microevolution take place. Next one is a big one. They call macroevolution. And it is a theory, it's not a fact. They're saying that all animals came from the origin source and all are related to one single cell. That is one single source. Means that all will go back to the same simple life form we call cell, S-E-L-L. It is believed that all species develop from one for one, not from various kinds, but just one single source. Thirdly, struggle. In the context of evolutions, is referred to survival of the fittest, right? So that is what theory does a lot more harms with that, which I will tell you more later. So friends, here I am not going to argue case for or against evolution, but main thing here is that you need to remember and always remember that evolution is a theory. It is not proven. It is still a theory till today. Right? So why I say that? Because number one, the next slide, the fourth, in the notes also you have it. The evidence found that the group classified separately under evolutionary theory actually appears all at once simultaneously in the Cambrian period. Cambrian period, which means 500 million years ago, when the life form is only algae and sea creatures or marine. right? So, but they do not appear gradually, like what evolution claim, but somehow they appear all at once together, right? So Foster proven that. Secondly, complex and simple life form appear together, and there is not a subsequent from simple to the complex, right? Number three, there are very few bridge Fosters that have halfway. No, there's no, you won't find a mermaid. You don't find half human, half fish. You don't find half eggs, half human. You can't find that. Number four, all life forms are very complicated. In fact, they are always had DNA. Discovery of DNA is very blow many mind of the scientists. Number four, mutations, the sudden change which are purposed to account for the development of one species to the next. Usually, if let's say there is a mutation take place, but that animals of species will not usually deformed, and usually that creature will die out. They will not survive. If there is a mutation take place, they just being deformed and they die out. Number six, interbreeding usually leads to sterility. They are not be able to reproduce. Number four, above all, where the statistically probabilities are analyzed quite apart from the other objection, there is not enough time for all the various varieties of life form to have developed. Not enough time to say, because in one generation success with next generation, it takes much longer time. But there's no way that it can be able to come with this line if we accept that as a theory, as a fact. No, there's no way. So the theory of evolution is not just academic interest. How we understand our origin has effect on how we view mankind as a whole. If you look at the history, you'll notice that leaders, governments infested by the evolutionist philosophy. For example, when Charles Darwin's good friends warned him, when his theory published it, you'll be, you know, he can foresee what will happen in the future. You will lead more war, and more wars will take place. More human suffering will take place. A basic or foundation of evolutionist theory is the concept of survival of the fittest. Whoever survives, the stronger one will survive on, it will evolve more. Those who can't, they will die off. That's why we call struggle. A struggle is all species face to survive. This is found in one of the philosophies which has shaped many of our societies, our civilized society, even today. It has caused untold suffering. Even the Americans capitalists say that business is a survival of the fittest. You can survive, you can able to big fish eat small fish. Right? So the small one cannot survive, you will have to die off. Similar outlook, Hitler's during World War II believed that the survival of the fittest. He believed that the Germany Iron race is a superior, right? Nazi is a superior, right? So the rest, whether handicaps, Jews, and those who are weaker one, they have to die. They have to die. They cannot allow them to survive and live, right? So they have to wipe out the whole this other race. Karl Marx wrote in Communists. They also found in Communists. Karl Marx also wrote about struggle, and that's why he started with revolution. So in fact, the word struggles could also be written across in the earlier days of the colonialism, where people were simply wiped out in the name of progress, up and on. So in short, the idea is a concept of the survival of the fittest, when applied to human beings, has caused more suffering than any other concept in the modern times. But it has also faced us with two huge choices as what we believe. The next things that we are looking at, the next chart that you have in your notes. Mental choice. If we believe in creation, you believe in the Father God. If you believe in evolution, you tend to go to the Mother Nature. In fact, the lady who does not exist. If you believe creation, you believe that this universe will result of personal choice. And you will argue that it was random and impersonal or chance if you accept evolution. In other words, that the design's purpose under creation is not random, but it's a personal choice. But evolution says that it's a random pattern. Somehow you random, and come out to why we are right now. I tell you, it needs a biggest faith to believe that, because how you random in a way that it becomes why we are right now is a bigger faith to believe that. But I believe that God created with a purpose. God made it. God made them. With creation, the universe is a supernatural production. In evolution, it is natural process. Under creation, the whole universe is an open situation, open to personal intervention, both God and man. In evolution, we have natural as closed system that operate itself. In creation, we have concept of providence, that God cares for his creation, God provides for his creation, God look after his creation. With evolution, we simply have coincidence, chance, luck. That's why you say good luck, because that's why you say by chance. Whether you buy Toto, you buy 4D, it's chance. It is luck. All right, so if anything that goes happen to you, whether good or bad, whether it's because of bad luck or good luck. With creation, we have faith based on facts. With evolution, faith based on fantasies. It is just a theory. In creation, we accept that God is free to make something and make man in his own image. If we accept evolution, we are left with the view that man is free to make God in whatever image he chooses out of his imagination. Right, so this is a mental choice, which if you adopt creation or if you adopt evolution, that is where you will lead to. That's where you accept what kind of idea. And next one, the last one is a moral choice. Moral choice behind accepting creations and evolution. Why is that people insist on the theory of evolution and hold on to it so fanatically? The answer is that because the real motive, it provides alternative, that you don't need God at all. And that's how Charles Darwin, all his life, he ran away from God, ran away from his father, because he doesn't need his father, he doesn't need God at all in his life. So with this moral choice, under creation, God is Lord. Evolution says that man is Lord, or man is God. With creation, we are under divine authority. With evolution, there is no God. We are autonomous as humans, and we can decide things for ourselves. If we accept God as creator, we accept that there are absolute moral standards of right and wrong, but with no God under evolution, we only have a relative situation. What is right in my own eyes is good enough. That's what the evolutionists say. With God's word, we talk of duty and responsibility. But evolutions, we talk of demands and right. To today, you see that why the certain countries or peoples always have these ideas of this is my right, I demand my right. And you begin to see that there is a moral choice to be adopting. Under God, we have the infinite dependence. We become a little children and speak to a Heavenly Father. But under evolutions, we are proud of our independence. And we speak of coming age of no longer needing God at all. There's no God in my life. There's no God in this universe. According to the Bible, man is a fallen creature. According to evolution, man is a rising and progressing all the time, up and on. That's how evolutionists see that. That's why if you want to say that that they cannot accept Christianity because you see that man is a fallen nature. But they cannot see, they will not accept that because they want to believe that man is a rising star. Will go up and up and up. Will evolve to the highest level. So in the Bible, we have a salvation for the weak. In evolution philosophy, we have the survival of the strong. The Bible teaches us that you are powerful when you do what is right. But in evolution, it leads to a might is right, telling you that rich is right. Power is right. Our outlook. One leads to peace, the other leads to war. When evolutionism says that you should indulge yourself in a way that you have to be in number one, be on top of the ladder. The Bible tells us that faith, hope, and love are the three main virtues in life. Ultimately, Bible teaches and lead us to heaven, but evolution promises a little, or just be a fate, hopelessness, or luck, and usually lead us to hell. It doesn't give us the assurance after this life where we will be. But we know in our Bible that our salvation comes from God. So that is what I have. I share with you today. And that is part 2, the session 2. We come with Genesis chapter 2. Next week, we're going to Genesis chapter 3 all the way to chapter 11, 3 to 11 in just one session. Right, so but we'll not go in every detail, but something I will highlight on chapter 3, and then in Noah's life on Cain, Noah's, and also Babel. And that's what we are going to look at in next session. Okay, so that's all I have. Let us, if you have any questions, you can just note it down in the chat. If not, you can stay behind, you can ask if you want to. And if those who need to leave, you can go ahead also, no worries. Yeah, that's all I have for you. Let me pray for you, a blessing for you. Father, I thank you for, in a very special way, Lord, that you have made us, you made the universe. Every creation, everything that we see in this world, we see the footprints, the handprint, the prints of you, every print that you have left behind in this creation. It blew our mind the way how life is like. It blew our mind that how things that can be seen so complicated in especially a life form, but yet we know that behind that there must be a creator. And most important, you also telling us that our relationship with you, you meet us in a very special way so that we can have a relationship with you. I thank you for your Son and show us the way to salvation, and so that we can reconcile back to you and restore our relationship with you. So I pray that as we move on from here, as we begin to study the rest of the other chapters, And most important, help us to see what? Your purpose. Your purpose. With all the words that you have spoken, the words that you have given to us, help us to see your purpose. And most important, restore us back again. If we are driven away from you, restore us back. Acknowledge that you are our Lord, our God. Restore our relationship with you if we are driven away from you. We thank you for this study, Lord. Bless those who are here. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you, and his shalom peace be rest with you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.